Okay. It's our last meeting of the calendar year. It's December 15th, the third Sunday in December. I am wearing my seasonally appropriate sweater, somewhat. I don't know. Anyway, today we have an actual agenda as opposed to other meetings, which don't always have agendas. Um, Today we have Jim Bumgardner with us. Jim, I'm going to give a little tiny intro to, and then kick it over to him. Uh, Tim Horner is going to also show us this hardware project that he's been working on for quite a while, which I think one or two of you will like a whole lot. Um, Adam and Ryan and Carl went to a retro computing something yesterday. And so Adam, I'm sure will share with us the excitement of that.
Yeah, I've got some pictures too I can share
Oh,
probably.
cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I'm hoping we can squeeze in Tim and Gustavo to talk a little bit about their work on updating Boreal Basic to work with the 2068. So first up is Jim. Jim does a lot of things. I found Jim because I have this Google alert set up so that anytime Timex Sinclair computers are mentioned on the things that Google finds, I get this little email. And a few months ago, I got this email that said that this guy had used his Timex to do some computer enhanced computer, what we used to call computer art back in the day, um, when he was in college, which was a few years ago, just like the rest of us. And so I got hold of Jim and I talked to Jim, and we had absolute blast talking about the stuff that he did, and um, the whole world of computer and electronic art. Um, and so I asked Jim to come here and talk to us about it. And I think I shared in the groups.io a link to um, his video where he recreated this particular one of the projects that he had done a number of years ago. So with that, Jim, I'm going to pass the spotlight to you.
All right. I am going to start by saying hi. Hi, everyone. And then I'll share my screen in a moment. Um, okay. I am sharing my desktop. And then I am going to, this is the 60-year-old man navigating Zoom. And then I'm going to go full screen. And you should be seeing a slide that says Jim Bumgardner. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
CrazyDad.com.
Yes, shameless plug. I'll do one of
What
those
do you
later.
mean shameless?
Oh. And shameful? No,
No, no, that's how we do it around here.
there's no shame.
There's no shame.
There's no shame in plugging.
That's right.
Right. So, yeah, so I have been doing computer stuff now since my first exposure to a Sinclair computer professionally. Uh, I was a child of the 60s and 70s, and I would not have predicted that up until that first exposure. I think there's probably some of you that were probably more into physical sciences and technical stuff as kids. I was not one of those kids. I didn't have a collection of Forrest Mims book from Radio Shack. I was into liberal arts stuff. When I applied myself, which was not often at school, the classes I did well in were typically music and English. Um, and I did a lot of reading and a lot of piano playing. And I thought computers were evil because that's what we were taught to believe in the 60s and 70s if you watched any kind of television shows that had computers in them or movies. So I had a low opinion of computers, as many people still do, apparently. But that all changed. So when I got out of high school, I attended an art school in California to study music. And unbeknownst to me, I kind of just picked the school randomly out of with knowing almost nothing about it, except that I could go there and study music full time, which is what I wanted to do, so I could be a rock star. And unbeknownst to me, it was actually a really great school that focused on contemporary music. And they had two really cool music studios that had these big modular synthesizers in them, Buchla synthesizers. Pictured in this photo from left to right are me on roller skates. Barry Schrader, who was my mentor, um, who retired a few years ago. Mort Subotnick, who's a famous Buchla composer dude, and who taught the grad students, and John Payne, whose daily job was to repair that beast of an instrument and was a very talented electrical engineer and audio engineer. So by my second year at Cal Arts, I had access to the studio, and I was doing a lot of what was then called electro-acoustic music, um, and doing a lot of splicing of reel-to-reel tape and a lot of patching of the synthesizer. And that was essentially my first exposure to um, computing, oddly enough, because a synthesizer is basically an analog computer. I did not know that at the time. Question? No. Okay. So I was also learning about stuff I had no exposure to prior to Cal Arts as a high school student in Phoenix. So one of them was the American composer John Cage, who was super interesting to me because he was so bizarre. Some of you probably know him because of his most famous piece, which is 433, which is a piece of music that consists of no playing for 4 minutes. No playing of instruments for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Most of the pieces of his that I was learned about at CalArts were not that particular piece, but a lot of his pieces that used chance operations. This is a piece he did the same year as 433 called Williams Mix. That was the first 8-track tape piece, and chance operations were used to construct it. Cage was very much in both of these pieces trying to remove the composer's ego from the process. And if you think about the 1952, late 40s, early 50s, he had just had a really good example of what happens when you let your ego get out of control. And so it seemed like a really good idea at the time to remove the male ego from the process of creation. And that is very much what a lot of his music is about. And so he's creating structures, but then he's creating opportunities for nature or randomness to basically express its own natural voice rather than him expressing his opinionated voice. And Williams Mix is basically that. And I will play a brief sample of it just to annoy you. And oh, by the way, for those of you that listened to the piece that John linked to, or sorry, that David linked to earlier, my apologies if you had to listen to more than 30 seconds of it. Anyway, here's a little bit of Williams Mix. Can you hear that? Now, remember this because the piece I'm going to show you that I made in college is essentially a ripoff of Williams, but it sounds very different, and there's reasons for that. Okay, so that's Williams Mix. Oh, okay.
Jim, what were his sources for all that? Because you hear all sorts of different things in there.
Likely recordings of random stuff that he made on reel-to-reel tape.
So he made all that himself and then spliced it in different ways.
Yes, and
I
also
see.
there were probably some music. I don't know for sure. There were probably some music concrete like sources which might have come from LPs.
I see.
Yeah, but it was different stuff recorded on tape and then mixed together using random choices. So if you look at the score, uh, each of these, is that a trapezoid or a rhombus? No, it's just a polygon. Each of these polygons is a different piece of source material that's being mixed in, and then these slopes represent fade outs. I'm not sure what the forked tail business is, because the effect of it to your ear would essentially be the same as a fade in, but
Hmm.
um, and this is one of his early chance pieces. He got more sophisticated with his use of chance operations over the next 2 decades, and was still using chance operations in the 70s. Okay. Okay. So, so my third year at CalArts was started in the fall of 1982, which, as you know, was a few years after the introduction of the Timex Sinclair in the United States. Um, and I was unaware of its existence. But then one day, and I can't tell you what month it was, but it was probably around November or December. I was walking down the hall and I peeked into Brian Evans' room. Brian Evans was a graduate student, who was one of those weird students who was 10 years older than everyone else that we thought was an old man. He was probably in his early 30s. And he had a little TV, black and white TV, that was drawing a square spiral shape like that out of little square blocks. And I was like, what's that? And he said, oh, it's a Timex Sinclair. And I said, where'd you get it? He said, Kmart. It cost $100. And I immediately got in my car because I had $100 burning in my pocket, and I went and bought one. And then subsequently, my grades plummeted. So I got addicted to the Timex Sinclair very quickly. I took to it very quickly. And I think it was because of my prior exposure to analog synthesizers that I was able to do so. I have a distinct memory very early on of encountering the page in the manual that described the random number generator, and that made me very excited because I knew then that I could use it to do all kinds of cool things. And the things that I wanted to do with it immediately were to fill the screen with random stuff, to reproduce Brian's spiral, which I did probably a few weeks later. Um, I wanted to make a program to read tarot cards because I was in the woo-woo stuff like tarot cards at the time. And I wanted to make music with it. And I knew that the random function was the key to all those cool things. And that was my favorite page of the entire manual, was that page right there. And I immediately knew what it was good for because the Buchla also had a module that was my favorite module on the Buchla, which was called the source of uncertainty. And it was a module that would just output fluctuating or smoothly fluctuating or discrete random voltages. And then you could use it to control the pitch of an oscillator and make random melodies or other things. And almost every patch that I made on the Buchla used as its source of creativity, or source of, I don't know what you call it, uh, was basically started with the source of uncertainty controlling a bunch of stuff to make interesting sounds. And if you took that out of the mix, what you got was stasis, right? So I already knew that randomness was important, and noise, and I already had a pretty good understanding of how to manipulate it in the analog realm. And so that little page made me very excited. And so pretty quickly, probably in the first 3 days, I was doing stuff like this program, although this is a Commodore program. And if any of you have not seen this book, it's definitely should be on your shelf. And that's about,
I do want to mention, since you brought up this book, the author allows it to be downloaded as a PDF.
Yes, that is
Mm.
correct.
So
But
feel
buy it
free.
anyway because
Yes, it's awesome.
yeah, it's awesome. And I remember just independently coming up with a program very much like this on the Timex Sinclair, and then doing variations on this where we just alternate between sets of graphic characters and having the screen scroll. Um, and then I remember going into local department stores where they had computers on display and typing in this program, right? And then leaving it to run and then just walking away. It was like a little sort of art vandalism that you would do in the computer department, whatever department they had these things in at the time. And because it was just such a quick thing. And I also remember very early on having this fantasy that I could write a 2 or 3 line program that would be like the holy grail of programming. That somewhere there was a program that was 2 or 3 lines long that would be really, really interesting and useful. And it was just a weird intuition. And I kind of feel like neural nets are that thing. The basic concepts behind neural networks are very simple, but they are, capable of great wonders these days. So anyway, cool book. Uh, I started using programs like this as input into the video synthesizer that they had at CalArts at the time. Sorry for the low resolution photo. Um, but they had one of these. There weren't very many of these out there, but it was essentially an analog synthesizer for video signals. And I used Timex Sinclair output. Sorry, Timex Sinclair output into the video synthesizer, and when they would warp it and spin it around and apply sine waves to it and various things and produce cool stuff.
How are you getting that input into it? Like through the RF connection somehow?
Yeah.
Oh,
Um, basically, I just had to get it into RCA, I think, and then there were RCA inputs basically. Um, I honestly don't remember exactly, but my memory is that there was an RCA input.
okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. Uh,
Shim, this is Gustavo. I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you remember any problem with the video setting or video clocking problem to connect the computer with this video
we
synthesizer?
we probably had them.
Oh,
Uh, and probably just lived with it. I mean, I do remember seeing scan lines.
exactly. Yeah.
Right. I do remember
Okay.
seeing scan lines. I don't know how sync was done. But it's a good question.
Yeah, no, but I remember with my computer and in
Yeah,
the 80s, I create a 10 seconds presentation
yeah,
in the digital mode with color using a Timex 2060A. And when I go to the TV studio and connect the machine to the TV system, we have a lot of problem to put the sync, the computer, but the Timex in this case. But finally, after many, many answers, okay, really was great. But that's why I ask you because you're working in the same area.
yes, but in all likelihood, not nearly to the degree of devotion and care that you were. This was a
Ah, okay,
yeah.
nice.
Uh, yeah.
Mhm.
The by the way, one of the sad things about all this stuff is that pretty much every tape, videotape and audio tape and physical score, paper score that I produced at CalArts is gone because I had them in storage and the storage space had a fire back in the late 80s. And
Mm.
so pretty much everything I'm telling you, I have to reconstruct from memory because I don't have the physical evidence. And my memory, just like all our memories, is extremely unreliable. I build up narratives that aren't true. and I kind of have to reconstruct things. So it's definitely a problem. And my apologies for any lies that I'm telling you today
No,
inadvertently.
no problem. Yeah, I remember the Ampex video recorder. Yeah, okay, all
Yeah.
times. Thank you.
So getting back to music, I had an assignment to do a longer composition. I was taking an advanced electroacoustics composition class, and I had an assignment to do a longer composition. So I planned a piece, and this is a quick reconstruction of the score that I just did this morning and photographed on graph paper. So and I did it on basically sheets of graph paper that were taped together. I plotted out 4 tracks. The intent was to do 2 tracks per stereo channel and ultimately mix the piece down to 1/4 inch tape. Um, the source material, so this is essentially a form of Williams mix. Uh, I didn't know, I hadn't had all that much exposure to the actual piece Williams mix at the time. So, and also I did not have Wikipedia, but but I was trying, but I wanted to do a piece that was based on chance operations. And I just thought to myself, if I want to do a piece that has a lot of different sounds and multiple tracks, how am I going to do that? And so the basic idea for the piece, which was called Wound Room, was to record ambient sounds in my dorm room. I recorded 32 of them onto reel-to-reel tape. I borrowed a reel-to-reel tape recorder. I recorded them in my room just by leaving the tape running all day in the room and then going back and kind of listening to it. And actually, it's probably more like 2 or 3 hours. And then just picking out bits and pieces that sounded interesting. So maybe someone was walking by with a boom box and it picked up a little music. So I got that. I got some conversation in the room. I got the sound of the air conditioning turning on and off, things like that. And so I produced out of that tape 32 tape loops. And each one was, anywhere from 8 inches to 20 inches of tape that was spliced together to make a loop so you could play it. So you would load the tape loop into the tape recorder and then hold one end with a pencil to maintain tension, and then the tape recorder would play the loop. And so I had this collection of tape loops that were stored in a paper bag. And then for each track of the piece, I had this set of, are these trapezoids, or I think they're trapezoids. I'm going to call them trapezoids. I had these set of shapes. One end is how long it takes to mix in, and then it plays for a certain amount of time, and then it mixes out, and as it fades out, the next piece is coming in. And so random numbers were needed to determine basically the length of this slope, the length of this duration, the length of this slope, and so on for each track. And then in addition, random numbers, I computed 2 random numbers for each sound. So the first random number is the tape loop that's being used, and the second random number was used to determine the effects that would be applied to the tape loop while it was being heard. And that included pitch changes, playing it in reverse, filtering it in various ways, applying delay effects to it, etc. And so there was a set of effects that were applied to it that were mostly accomplished on the buchla itself. So the output of the tape recorder was fed through the buchla and then back out to another tape recorder that was recording it. And I used a 2-track tape basically to record. So track A here would have been recorded to 2-track tape. On the left channel, I would have done this sound just by manually mixing it in over 5 seconds, letting it play, mixing it out. And then at the 10-second mark, I would, when this one was due to come in, I would then start recording that one, fade it in. Then I would mix that whole thing down to a single channel onto another tape. That gave me track A. And I would do the same thing for track B, track C, track D, and then the whole thing was mixed down to 1/4 inch tape. And that was the piece, basically. So So let's talk about the random numbers. So to make this piece, I needed random numbers. Now I don't know what came first, the Timex Sinclair or this piece. My memory says I had the Sinclair and I kind of designed the piece around the Sinclair, but I suspect that's not what happened. What probably happened was I was already working on the piece and I was finding it extremely tedious to produce large collections of random numbers. And the way that I was producing the random numbers initially was using the 3-coin method of generating I Ching hexagrams. This was a thing that John Cage did, although he used yarrow stalks because he was a beast. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the I Ching, this is the I Ching. This is the copy I had at CalArts. I still happen to have that because I didn't have it in storage. And it's a set of 64 verses, whoa, each of which is associated with a hexagram, which is these 6 lines, which is essentially a binary code. And it gives you a number from 0 to 63 or 1 to 64. 1 to 64, when you're talking about the I Ching, it's not base 0, or it doesn't start, they don't start counting it at 0. And it naturally lends itself to binary encoding, obviously. And you could simply just use a flat random number generator to generate it. And a common, easier method of generating these hexagrams is to flip 3 coins to produce the result of each line. And if you do that, it gives you a flat distribution. So you have an equal likelihood of getting any of the hexagrams. But the traditional method is to use a bundle of 50 yarrow stalks. And then there's an elaborate method to subdivide the stalks and manipulate them in your hands. And that method, the traditional method, has different statistics than the coin flip method, in which certain hexagrams are more likely to occur, especially ones with broken lines, are more likely to occur. The yin ones are more likely to occur than the yang ones that have the solid lines. So that's interesting. And in general, I think it's an interesting idea when you're using random numbers to make art or screensavers and things like that, to not just use a perfectly flat random number, flat PRNG. Those are desirable if you're doing cryptography. You want it as statistically flat as possible. But for art, it's kind of nice to have a sweet spot and then have outliers that don't occur as frequently, because then you kind of stay in a comfort zone, and then when you get something different, it's rare, and perceptually that makes it more interesting, I think. So that's what I was hoping to get, although whether I got it, I don't know. But I did. So
Yeah, you know, Jim, that reminds me. It sounds like, did you go completely random, or did you sometimes fudge it to make it sound better?
I went completely random.
Ah,
I went completely random, but I was using an algorithm that had a weight that had preference for certain sounds, and you could hear that in the piece a little bit. But again, the piece was very laborious to construct, so I didn't have anything to compare it to. But that was the intent. Great question, though. It feels like if you're doing an aleatoric piece, in tribute to John Cage, it kind of violates the spirit to actually tweak it. I would be very interested to know if Cage actually tweaked his own stuff. I seriously doubt it. It wasn't his MO. So the final piece was about 5.5 minutes long. It would have been about 200 feet of tape. It was performed 2 years in a row at an electro-acoustic music festival at CalArts in the Royal Disney Concert Hall, which was sort of a small to medium-sized recital hall. A 200-foot tape roughly fits a 14-foot by 14-foot room. And in my memory, the tape recorder was over here in the corner. The tape went all the way around the room, all the way back to the entrance doors. Then there were, I had mounted spools on the wall so that it would go over the entrance door so people could go in without bumping into the tape. So it basically encircled the room. It was being pulled by the tape recorder. There was no planning in this, in my memory. I just got lucky that it happened to pretty much fit the size of the room that it was played in. And that score that I showed you, I gave to a friend of mine who was in the art school, and he made a pretty version of it using cutouts from magazines, where each trapezoid or whatever it is replaced with a magazine cutout. And that was projected using a slide carousel on the wall that was not synchronized in any way to the tape. And so there was basically a projection here of the score. There was a single chair in the middle of the room for people that walked in, and it just ran all day. And that was the piece. This is a reconstruction of the piece that I did using FFmpeg. And this was sort of an interesting intellectual project. This one's 8 channels rather than 4 channels, but I used essentially the same techniques. I recorded ambient sounds in the house during the pandemic. And then I attempted to construct the piece entirely with FFmpeg. So the visuals you're seeing were constructed using clipping calls and combining videos, still images in FFmpeg, and the audio was mixed and the effects were applied using FFmpeg. So I made a little Python library that basically allowed me to create a script of events that were then converted into FFmpeg calls, and the entire piece took about 15 minutes, 20 minutes to construct. And that's the thing that was sent to you, and I'll just play a few minutes of it. So again, a reconstruction, a tribute, to quote Tenacious D, of a song which no longer exists, that was burned in the fire, and made using modern techniques without the use of a Timex Sinclair. Coded in Python and constructed in FFmpeg. But it sounded a little bit like this. It's a little different than Williams' mix. There's less going on. That has a lot to do with the timing and the sound choices.
So do I hear people talking? Is that what that is?
And they're sped up because a random number said that particular clip needs to be played at double speed. That's my wife.
And dead center is a little drawing of the composition.
Yep. That was probably another graph paper reconstruction of the piece.
Yeah. So how, I'm just curious, from the Python perspective, how difficult was it for you to figure this out?
It's a weekend project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't. I got really excited by the idea that I could construct it entirely in FFmpeg. It was like one of those weird, I don't know, a lot of you are probably the same way, where you're like, how can I make a program that does this amazing thing on a original Sinclair architecture, right? So it's an interesting constraint to be under, because FFmpeg wasn't really designed to be a music audio graphics workstation. And so that was sort of the interesting challenge, was, can I make this relatively simple piece? Have both the synchronized display score and the audio pretty much completely mixed by command line calls to FFmpeg. And so most of the work was was like testing the individual operations, like the individual audio effects and the individual video things I needed to do, just to see that I could do them and then combine them into multiple calls. So that it was just mostly trial and error. And then the actual construction of the piece was relatively simple, because it's not a complicated piece, really. So that's the piece. I don't listen to stuff like this for pleasure. So don't I'll feel bad if I didn't develop. I don't listen to John Cage with pleasure ever. So I just find it interesting. Okay, now how do I get out of here? There we go. Oh, this is the shameless plug portion of the
Yeah.
conversation. Hey, go to my puzzle website, get free puzzles. Feed your puzzle addiction.
And
So I've been doing puzzles since for about almost 20 years now, and I have lots of them, and some of them run daily in the print edition of the New York Times, and many of them are available in interactive form for you to do on your iPad or phone, although an iPad's better, and they are all there for you to have for free. Enjoy. And
so,
that is my presentation.
Jim, how did you get from, going to school for, composition to now I make puzzles on the daily?
Well, that was a long journey. First of all, let's see, I picked up computers in '82, which was my third year in the bachelor program at CalArts. At that point, I got so addicted to programming the Timex Sinclair and later the VIC-20 a few months later that I would just I would be up all night programming that thing, and then I would just be like a zombie in the morning. I just loved it so much, and then my grades tanked. Well, the weed didn't help either, and uh, and so it was pretty clear by the time I was in my senior year that I was not going to get financial aid for the master's program. And so I was going to be kicked out, or I was going to graduate and then I would be out in the street. And then I could either try to have a career in the music industry or use my computer skills, which were already obviously in higher demand than music skills. Like there were no ads in the classified section. Need a composer, must have a BFA.
Right.
I have never seen that. But there were a lot of jobs for people who knew how to use computers, who were self-taught at that time. There still are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think, having a computer science background is a prerequisite for being a good software engineer. It's nice, but it's not necessary. So I got a job even before I graduated. I got a job doing programming at a local small business, and then a few months after I graduated, I got a better job at a salaried position, and continued working doing programming. Learned C,
Oof.
which it took a few tries. Going from basic to C.
Mm-hmm.
Was a challenge because the whole pointer thing kind of made my brain explode because basic was so much easier. Oh yeah, and then the first job we were using DBase 2.
Mm-hmm.
And DBase did not have a random number generator, and I was trying to do music programming in DBase, but it didn't have a random number generator. So I would spawn out to a basic program, have it generate like 200 numbers, and then go back into DBase and use the table of 200 numbers to generate music, because DBase was a more elegant language otherwise, and it was really dumb. Eventually, I just scrapped DBase and just was doing music programming in BASIC. And the last year I was at CalArts, I did a very elaborate piece that was for 7 pianists playing 6 upright pianos in a grand, arranged in a circle, playing computer-generated counterpoint. And that was more computationally sophisticated piece than the Timex Sinclair piece. So at that point I'm working in it was a real estate information firm, dial-up service, and then I was one of the many people that got into multimedia edutainment in the early 90s. I was working for Time Warner. and then co-founded a early internet startup called The Palace, which was a avatar chat system that I created while I was at Time Warner. That got spun out into a company. It then died during the first dot-com bubble, if you all remember that. And then I was working for doing embedded programming for cable TV boxes. I have some patents for that, but I hate patents. And then what happened? And Yahoo, Flickr, the variety of startups, and then eventually, how did I get into puzzles? So while I was doing all that stuff, the Sudoku craze happened, and I got interested in puzzle construction. I'd already been interested in computer chess in general. By the way, if you're interested in the puzzle stuff, I was on a podcast and talked about it at greater length, called Good Game, the Good Game podcast, and talked about it. But basically, because I'm self-taught, and I'm self-taught because I'm really shitty at any other kind of taught. I don't listen. I'm not a good listener. I need to kind of do hands-on trial and error. That's how I learn. I learn with my fingers. And so I did a lot of clones of popular software as a way to teach myself. Like, how do you do a communication program like Procom, or Q modem, or one of those. So I made my own. How do you do a spreadsheet? So I made my own. And then every now and then I would encounter something like I had no idea how it was done. And one of those was computer chess engines. And so then I got really into computer chess engines just because I wanted to understand how it was done. And similarly, I got into programming Sudoku because I didn't know how it was done initially. And since then, and that was like 2005, since then, I've gotten really into it. And I have programmed probably 100 different logic puzzles, including some fairly elaborate ones. And it's a fun, that's my puzzle is to make the puzzles. It's a fun intellectual exercise.
Very cool. Very cool. Anybody has any questions for Jim?
If anybody's interested, I created a 400 puzzle 16 by 16 Sudoku PDF.
Nice. Yeah, if you'd like to start with
no answers.
Yeah.
I'm always interested in location. Jim, are you still in the Bay Area?
No, I'm still in Los Angeles, which is where CalArts was.
Oh, I thought it was, for some reason I thought CalArts was in SF, but okay.
Yeah, it makes sense. Subotnick was from there because he was at the Mills Tape Center up there, but he came down to LA to teach at CalArts. But no, I've been in LA ever since. I'm originally from the East Coast. But
I'm in the Bay Area,
so yeah,
I'm just north of you.
Cool. Where?
The Bay Area. I live in Union City, north of Fremont, south of Oakland, north of San Jose, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, for years I wanted to live in the Bay Area, and it just never worked out. And now I'm kind of glad I don't.
Well, I grew up here. The last time I was in LA. I had a day to burn in LA, and I've seen nothing I was interested in seeing. So I like it up here.
Yeah, understood. Totally understood.
Well, Jim, you haven't actually like you said you got into computer programming after you graduated with a music degree.
No, I got into computer programming while I was studying for my music degree.
But you finished with a music degree, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, have you done any music professionally? I don't think I heard that. Because I see you in the background there, you have keyboard and like a music stand and some other instrument right by the door, it looks like. So tell me about that.
I do it for pleasure.
Oh, I see.
And I've been a little leery of trying to do it for more than pleasure because there are things that I've done for pleasure which people have paid me to do, and then they no longer are fun.
That makes sense.
So I'm a little leery of that, but But yes, I do. I continue to do music for pleasure. Every few months, I get really into modular synthesis. So there's a Eurorack system behind me, and I'm in a band with my kids, and yeah, and we, get occasional gigs at local bars and pa people's parties and stuff, but nothing serious. I have done a lot of, I have continued to periodically do a lot of experimental music. One of the more interesting things I did about almost 20 years ago is called the Whitney Music Box. You can Google that, and it's a sort of an interesting um, music plus math thing that's worth checking out.
Jim, when when we were first talking and you mentioned the I Ching, it reminded me that someone, I don't know someone wrote a program called the Dragon's Companion for the 2068. I'm just going to show that real quick here because I have some screen captures. So here's my suggestion is 2068s are available on eBay. They're kind of pricey for what they are, but you can get one. And this will,
Nice.
do it for you. It's a coin toss, I Ching. And
Yeah.
so there's a couple interesting things about this. I don't know if you can pick up in the upper left-hand corner, it says, how do you do 85 columns? I think that part of the author, the person who wrote the program, part of his idea was here just to demonstrate this 85 column mode that was available in the 2068. The 2068, like the 1000, was 32 by 24.
Yeah.
So you had to do some special programming. But this will, give you the, toss the I Ching for you, tell you what the various hexagrams mean, theoretically. And then tells you a little bit about it. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, that was very cool. The program I wrote just generated lists of numbers, which I then manually wrote down with
Oh
a
my
pencil.
gosh. Okay.
Now, if I had known that there were books that you could buy that were filled with random numbers, I probably would have gone and bought one, but I didn't know they existed because we didn't have Wikipedia. And I wasn't going to Caltech.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you very much. I love hearing about, how people use their computers, and usually it's, I got it, I learned to program, my grades tanked, so, you fit that portion. Not often.
But then I took it apart and learned how to solder things. And
That is also usually a big portion of, at least 50% of the population is, I took it apart and I put a new heat sink on it and, attached a keyboard to it.
And the other 50% is they do that and they break it.
Right. I took it apart and then it broke.
yeah. Yeah. I never got that deep into it. I was really interested in programming, but that was kind of where it ended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Mhm.
Very cool. Thank you, sir. Hey, Tim Horner.
Yep.
Are you ready for the baton?
Yes, everyone's ready.
Okay, I'm going to spotlight you, and all I'm going to say, Tim, is about your what you're going to show us is that I think that this is a thing that a few of you will like. So take it away, Tim.
Got the teaser. Cool. Some backstory. A few years ago, I play with Timex Sinclair stuff. And a few years ago, my partner wanted to get me a present. And I says, as long as it's broken. And so she got some broken ZX81s from the UK, and it came with some ZX printers. And there the rabbit hole starts. And this is actually one of them. It had a broken belt in it because they all do. The belt deteriorates. So I 3D printed a new belt for it, got it working, and then got into, well, how does it work? And so Stuart's come on this meeting before, and I did some stuff with him where we drove either one of these or a TS2040 with an Arduino. And Stuart's got a wonderful site with all instructions. He sells a little kit on eBay to if you want to not use a Timex or a ZE to chat to these things, it does that. So that was driving one, but then of course the counterpart is how to be one. And so I teased this to David like May or April, quite a while ago.
Yeah.
And so here's a version of the board with serial and parallel ports, the mandatory Pico, little SD card. And so what it does is it lets you print to a regular printer from your either a ZX81, TS1000, Spectrum, and obviously the 2068. So if I could flip screens. Oh, that was off. Let me try the other button. Oh. Right. Hopefully that's flipped over. Is that back the front for you guys or right the way around?
It's the right way around.
Cool. So if I run this, which is just mustn't run. Hang on, I have to get on some way of seeing. If I run this, break and hit sort of copy, which copies the screen. In the background is the dulcet sound of my dot matrix printer, which, bear with me. It's flip back to me because you probably don't need to see this. Come on. Has printed out well, it's hard to see. Printed out what we just saw on the screen. I've got a little thing that does sort of double the dots, so it's sort of a higher resolution, but the same number of it's 120 dots per inch, so it just doubles everything up. It also works with these little FPOS 3-inch printers. So if I hit the copy again, and flip, yeah. And why didn't it copy? There you go, the demo gods. Oh, it's turned off. Let me turn it on. Right, one more time with feeling. And
Is
so
is that printer noiseless? I mean, relatively speaking?
It's fairly quiet, and there's the same hello thing. Yeah, it's pretty quiet.
Okay.
It's plugged in with serial at the moment, but these come with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So on my to-do list is to actually have completely wireless because it's battery powered. It's rechargeable. So and you can get sort of better resolution too. But anyway, so that's now everyone thinks, well, hey, this was available back in the 80s, Memotech and DK Tronics and everyone else allowed you to print off with a regular printer. But there's more. If I could share a screen.
Yeah, go ahead.
That one. Let me just hide this. Oh, no, I actually want to flip over. So it's actually the 3 prints that I just did have been actually captured.
Oh, I wonder if your screen
have been captured on the machine. And if I just outprint something, something like that. Give it a second. He says, give it a second, and it doesn't refresh. Oh, there it is. It should have auto refreshed, but you know, still a few things now.
You didn't share your screen.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Let me hit the share button. Right. So hopefully you can see it now. And so yeah, so you know, I'll hopefully see if another outprint works. Yeah, not sure why it didn't come through. But anyway, there's the second one I just did. So that's
Are
coming
those
through.
bitmaps, Tim? What are those?
Yeah, let me leap into that. So So by default, you capture it here. You can turn off the printing to the actual printer and just have capture. You can turn off the capture. You can turn off the actual printer if you want, so that you're just getting capture. So you don't need to plug a device in. But yeah, so these are if you sort of save image, R&D bitmaps, BMP files. But there's way more to that. There's all sorts of options. You can sort of say, hey, this is the gray background, but hey, I want a TS2040, which pretty much printed on white paper. You can say whether you want it as a PNG or a JPEG, and then if you save as, now you've got a JPEG file. So that would all be well and good. But also, and there's more, you can actually flip these over, and it actually does this is a font now. This has now been converted to text. So if you go into Notepad and paste it, it's actually readable text. It does like sort of an OCR, a budget OCR on it. And so all of these, this is actually a font. If you hit the Z Make Bass, it actually gives you an encode you could then load with Z Make Bass. And so it doesn't matter with regular text, but if I go to the SD card, which is also there, if you pick something like this that has various font characters, you see on the Z Make Bass they use this \quote and stuff to refer to the sort of the block characters and other various characters. So yeah, it does a conversion into a format that then you can actually reload into the machine. It also recognizes if the line starts with line numbers. So if you flip this eye over, what it's done, if you look back here, this line actually wrapped line 160, but it recognizes it starts with a line number, sort of unwraps it. So you sort of, this is actually a single line now. And you can grab these guys and copy them and paste them around, so you can move them back and forth between the various devices, the various internal and SD card. What else is useful? Oh, the printing, you can, if you turn the printer on, it can either be serial, where you configure up all the settings, or parallel, which is much easier to drive. And that corresponds to the 2 ports on the device. And to really sort of, dial it up to 11. I thought installation's always a trouble with these sorts of bits of software. Oh, by the way, sorry, I forgot to mention, this is being hosted just locally on my machine, but it actually hosts itself. So you can open, and this is actually onto the device itself. And so this is the Pico sharing up the pages. It's sort of self-hosting. It's connected to the Wi-Fi. It's chatting at the moment over the Wi-Fi. But configuring is always a bit of a hassle. So what I did is included in here the ability to connect over so the idea is you copy on the MicroPython, that's just a file. The thing acts like a drive, you drag that on. Once you've got MicroPython on there, you can connect it over a serial port, over a USB port, and you can jump in, and that's not talking. Why is that not chatting? That's annoying. So yeah, you can actually configure the network and the password, although it's not talking at the moment for some strange reason. Interesting.
Is it already established?
Yeah, I don't know why it's sort of gone. Maybe the old off and on is a plan.
We need Roy.
Oh. Yeah, let me power everything off and on. The demo god's defeating me. Right, that's connected. Interesting. Well, that's annoying because I was going to show the install, which copies the software down to it. But for some odd reason, the serial's not working.
Do you have to change it from control over serial? You have to turn that off?
Yeah, not really. It's
Okay.
yeah, so yeah, theoretically this should work, but it's going to fail because yeah. Anyway, so what it would do is normally have a little progress bar and copy all the files over. If it was working for the demo, which it has not worked before, but how can it be? Yeah, and that's and the other one is if you flip back to here, you can hit like a print and actually print it on your regular PC printer if you want to. Is there anything else interesting on? Oh, there's a download button which just pulls the JPEG or the PDF or whatever you've got down to the appropriate place, just wherever your downloads go to. And I think that's sort of pretty much everything.
So Tim, you designed this. I'll be very high scientific here. You've designed this doodad that plugs into the back of anything from an 81 to a Spectrum to a 2068, captures L-print, L-list, and copy output, and then can send it to a real printer of either serial or parallel, so like an Epson, whatever that you can get these days. I can't even imagine where you would get a serial printer these days, but and for authenticity, if your heart desires such a thing, you can get a tiny thermal printer from someplace like AliExpress and print to that, or send it to your computer, and not only do you get the graphic capture of it, you get like you said, the cheap OCR, the crazy output. Now the OCR doesn't work on the sine wave plots, right? You get
sorry.
You get wackiness.
Yeah. I'll briefly do the thing of that. Share. So if I go to, everything's unplugged now. I've got it in my hand. It produces it. If it finds a character it can't figure out in the font, it just produces a sort of question mark. So you get a set of question marks. I've actually unplugged it, but it either comes with like the built-in ports, or the same sort of connector as your sort of semi-standard PC, and that's what this was plugged into, regular PC ports. So
there's got to be about a dozen of those on eBay right now.
Yeah. This is serial parallel. You can get the serial parallel together as well. So exactly, good summary, David. That's exactly what it does.
This is all the software runs on the browser for the user.
The user stuff's all front end in the browser, and then the back end's all Python.
And what's doing the browser? Is it what's serving the software for the browser? Is it the Pico?
So the second screen I hit, if it doesn't can because it's unplugged. Let me share that. So this screen here was just served locally. I've just got there's like half a dozen different ways of serving files locally. I've got a one-line Python command that does it. But if you're into Node, there's a one-line Node thing that will serve up files locally. You can do it with PHP, all sorts of languages. You can share up files locally. That's what this is. And this one is actually hosted on the Pico itself.
Wow.
So that's the self-hosting, as it were. So the intention is to have this up on one of the GitHub pages. You should be able to connect and install the software, which unfortunately I couldn't demo for some insane reason. And then once it's installed, you can then browse to it locally. So yeah.
Wow.
So the Pico is a WebSocket server and a regular web server, HTML web server. And if the WebSocket stuff was working, it would actually refresh as the stuff comes through. But clearly nothing's working today. Although both of those things did work an hour ago. But yeah.
So the only thing missing is the smell of the burning paper, right? And
so it's just the board, and it plugs into ZX81 Spectrum, TS1000. It works everywhere except caveat on a ZX81 with no extra memory, unexpanded. It doesn't actually have a full screen, just due to the design. So when you hit copy, it sort of doesn't work because it's expecting, the 32 characters, 256 pixels across. So that's the only place it doesn't work. A TS1000 has 2K memory and it expands out and it all works. So the copy doesn't work on an unexpanded ZX81, but everything, the old print and the old list and everything else works everywhere. David's asking, does it work on a, David Solly's asking, does it work on a Spectrum Next? If Spectrum Next supports a ZX printer or a TS 2040, yes, it does. I haven't tried that. I've tried it on the Timex, the ZX81, Spectrum Plus, a regular Spectrum, and the TS 2068, and everything works except for the copy on the unexpanded ZX81 because it actually emulates. Because the original ones back in the 80s that did Centronics printing, they just substitute the ROM in and do their own print routines. This doesn't do that. It just acts like a printer. Sorry, you're going to say, Gustavo?
Yes. No, the question is, you emulate a 2040 printer or Spectrum printer. The question is regarding the input-output port. The original printer is full decoded on the I/O map. You are using the same decoding I/O lines or just full decoding the F1 port?
Yeah, it's using the same decoding as the TS 2068. The original ZX81 only used one address port, and obviously it clashed in the 2068, so they used two. They use address 2 and address 7. So it does the same partial decoding as the actual TS 2040, which is backward compatible with the ZX printer.
Okay.
But yeah, it's mirrored all over the place, but essentially it does the same decoding.
Okay. No, my question was oriented if, in case you have a full decoding, I can use the mirror I/O ports. That is my question oriented. If you use single one, I can use the next of the ports.
Yep. Yeah. It's an emulation. It's exactly the same as the 2040 in that respect.
Great.
And Tim, for the deep trivia aficionados, you discovered something about the difference between the Spectrum character set and the 2068 character set?
Yeah, if you nerd out on fonts, it turns out for whatever reason, although the TS 2068 is a Spectrum with extra bits, someone decided the lowercase w and lowercase m shouldn't be so skinny. So they made them 1 pixel. They put an extra dot between the little bumps of the M and the hoops of the W. And sort of I found that out with my OCR when I printed and it wouldn't sort of capture the characters. And so so this supports both now. If it detects one or the other, it just assumes it's a lowercase w.
I think that came up before. I think Ryan might have actually talked about it, I think.
Yeah.
Ryan?
Yeah. Sorry, David?
Oh, no, I was going to say, yeah, that's possible. But also,
what I was asking was clearly he's doing the OCR in the Python on the Pico. If there would be, you would need a little routine, but you could have a little machine code routine that you call that would send the current font via the font pointer to the Pico to use. So if it'd be an extra step that you obviously have to load that code and run it. And then it would just use whatever font was in use on the device. Now you can't use that on the 81, of course, but
sort of the decode's all in JavaScript side. It's just bitmaps as far as the Python, and this thing, and if you send a custom character, it's just bitmaps. It'll just all work. And so the only real usage of having the UDG stuff would be to then do the OCR on it. And even then, you'd have to then also build a font that shows the character that you've UDD. So you'd have to sort of build a font on the fly to make that work if you wanted to do the OCR bit. But that's doable. There's just another thing to do. I'm sure there's a a JavaScript library out there that builds fonts.
Well,
So I did a
and
custom font for it, and David's using that on his website, which is a Timex font, and then there's a font for ZX81 Spectrum, which can actually coexist with each other. Sorry, David.
yeah. Well, so I was going to say that you encoded this all into a TrueType font,
Yep.
font face, which is available on GitHub.
Yeah, so that was another rabbit hole, was building the fonts. But yeah, so there's all the block characters actually mapped to the equivalent Unicode block characters. If I hadn't unplugged everything, I could have shown in the hash. There's a checkerboard. They all map over to the Unicode. Some of them don't. The inverse characters don't map over, but there's a sort of inverse ABC, but with a circle around them. So everything maps over as much as possible to the Unicode character sets. And depending on which font you've got, they have more or less support for some of those characters. Yeah, I should plug it back in and be able to share that, but whatever. I suppose it's academic, really.
The M and W has this different bitmap.
Yeah, they're the only characters. The lowercase m and lowercase w.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's I don't know why they decided that was a thing to do.
Yeah, that's such a bizarre thing to decide to change.
Yeah, let me just quickly do a show and tell of that. Oh, and I pick share, second button. Yeah, so if you down this and flip it over, see these are all Unicode characters, but it doesn't understand the question marks are actually in this is ZX81. That's actually in that font. The pounds there. So if you copy all this and put it into Notepad, these are all whatever the font is, default font on Windows Notepad, and see the inverse ones. I picked those. It doesn't understand a couple of the characters, but most of them I found equivalents. Oh, there's 3 that it doesn't understand as part of the block stuff. But this is the Unicode pound and all the various other characters. The hash it understands. But yeah, so the
I think the Unicode doesn't have those gray blocks, right?
Oh yeah. The funky.
Yeah, whatever it. Hang on, what is it on the?
Or some of them. I think there is
Yeah,
1 or 2.
so it's these 2 here, the ones that are part black and part checkerboard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's like a gray one, but not the others.
Yeah, so it hasn't found these, but it has found these. If I flip back, yeah, so it's just a few of those, but it's found a couple of, and it depends which font you've got, how much support there is for the other characters.
And Tim, the listing you have.
Oh, so yeah,
has an example, I think, of the M, the lowercase m.
Oh yeah. The long share. Yeah, so the where's the lower? Oh, so it's down here. The lowercase m there with the extra wide. But if I flip it over, this is still on a Spectrum font, and so if you pay attention to the M and flip it, the M's the skinnier M in my font, my Windows font.
And the W, you can really see.
And the W, yeah. So but the actual bitmap is the actual Timex ones. This is a Timex character set with this bit of code, which you can obviously just grab the code for it. This is the ZX81 character set. This is the code that generates. This is a picture from the ZX printer manual, which is sort of like a sort of flower thing, and then the 2 sine and cosine waves. And so these are the L lists of the thing before them.
So cool.
This is all sort of responsive. So if you make your screen skinnier, they all go in line, and if you make it wider, they make it. And see if I zoom out, it'll eventually fit them in. So it doesn't work on a phone. I haven't done the effort to do the small screen, but it works on the big screens. It can probably shut off the selection, and you can you can select any of these and hit copy, and then over on the SD card, you can paste it in, and it sort of moves them between the SD and the internal.
That's just crazy.
Yeah.
So how close to ready for prime time?
Yeah, David, we've got to chat because I think you might help out with the production. This is actually largely populated by the board manufacturers, apart from the connectors, and the software's apart from your
Hey,
sort
Tim,
of.
you're still sharing your screen, so you're showing
Oh,
us
sorry.
like that stuff and
All right, let's drop that. Yeah, so this is largely populated by the board manufacturers, apart from the edge connector and the couple of connectors. So yeah, we've got to talk about. I don't see why we couldn't make the hardware now and then just get there's a little. I mean, clearly the demo of the software didn't entirely work with the serial, which is annoying. But yeah, it just need a little bit of bug fixing. So really close. We just got to sort out. David, maybe you can help out with some of the productizing of it.
Since I'm in the US and you're not.
Oh, and also you do great work, the manuals and all the doc.
Yeah, that's right. We need to make a manual for this.
So Tim, so the printers it prints to are just the ones that would be connected directly.
Yeah, like I was saying, this thing you can get a Wi-Fi version, and so if I get that working, then other Wi-Fi printers are you could actually print directly because
What protocol would that be?
This currently supports the Epson, the ESCP, Escape P or whatever. And so does the receipt printers and my Epson behind me both support ESCP.
I meant
but I'll have to
the print server protocol.
Yeah, so there's a handful of them, but it seems as if they've settled on a sort of fairly simple one. And so then it's not so much talking to it, it's the print control language, whatever you're using for that. And so I'm not entirely sure. I'll go buy a cheap printer, Wi-Fi printer, and see if it works. There's a few different bitmap formats that they can send it through as, and I've had a look. I just haven't had a play with it yet. So yeah, the intention.
Because I was thinking of existing printers that you might have on your network, for example.
Yeah, so I'll get this working because the printer control language is the same. It just needs the Wi-Fi. And then once I get that working, I'll buy, like I say, a budget printer and just try it and just figure out what the current defaults. There's an Apple print server thing, Wi-Fi print server, and there's two other different formats. But I think
a lot of them will support AirPrint these days, I think.
Yeah, that's the Apple one. Yeah, and that's not very complex. In fact, the bitmaps are actually compressed on here, and the compression uses an Apple compression packbits from back in the 80s, which is a fallback protocol for faxes. They use a more complicated compression, but they can fall back to this. And I suspect that the AirPrint uses the same thing. So I'm sort of already got the compression bitmap compression algorithm sort of sorted. That's all done in Python, and then when it pulls it back to the web page, it then uncompresses it because your computer's insanely quick.
That's great.
And the normal Epson Escape, we use the Escape P2.
Yeah, this is just Escape. Yeah, this is just Escape P, but I mean the graphics print command I'm using is generic enough that it works on. These are ESC POS, which is a sort of subset of ESCP, and
okay.
And it's the same thing except the double density. The double density, this thing doesn't support, but the printer does. Sorry, David.
The POS, point of sale.
Yeah, yes.
Did not occur to me that there would be a, ESC Epson printer thing just for point of sale printers. How bizarre.
Yeah, it's largely compatible, but it also includes barcodes and a few other extensions which probably don't turn up on your dot matrix printer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
You sham the printer to the Century 21. Great. Great solution. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Tim. Um,
Thank you.
Joe.
Uh,
Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
David, I
Yeah.
just have one more, just a quick thing for Tim. I don't know if you, a while back I was showing inspired by what you did, I think with the font was I was playing around with this other version of a Sinclair font, and maybe I could use your help in making the font file.
Yeah,
Because basically, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say there's a website called Fontstruct, Fontstruct.
Okay.
And you can just it used to have to register with them, but you can sort of get on. I think you can get on without logging in, and it lets you build bitmap fonts that then end up as TrueType that you can convert to WebWAF files and various other ones. And I actually started with someone's Spectrum font, which he wasn't quite accurate. So I fixed a few of the bits and it added all the block characters, did the ZX81, the ZX81 font in there, and then did the Timex font as well, which David shared on the GitHub to the greater group. But yeah, by all means, contact me, Ryan. Unfortunately, I went down the font rabbit hole, so I know a little bit about it.
Well, here, David, I'll see if you saw that I joined on my
I saw the
Pi
Pi. Yes.
as a test. So see if it's working better now. I'm going to try to share this little window
You
real
have to
quick.
turn the video on for that.
No.
Here we go.
So Tim, this is what I was doing was a monospace font of what that looks like the Sinclair font but isn't pixelated.
Mhm.
I was using Font Forge here and I just was having trouble getting this to get converted properly. It just comes out kind of crazy. But basically, yeah. So I can contact you, but this was the idea I had, and I got all the forms done. I probably just need to start with a better font template and like paste these into it or something. But yeah, that's what I was doing. So that this was something that wasn't pixelated, but was like maybe ideally daily usable in some sense, maybe in a terminal.
Mm.
Fontstruct does support all the curves and smoother stuff as well. There's heaps of stuff over there. I'm only selling it because it worked well for me, and it handles the
Okay.
monospace and all the various other bits. You might even find something, but you've obviously done all the work, so.
Yeah, it's just when I try to get it to a font that the font metrics seem to be a little weird. So
The Pico logo up here and the one that's on the web page, or maybe I'll quickly share that because I geek out on it. This font, this is actually a font as well. There's a Timex Sinclair font where the only letters are the SINCLAIR um, out in the world, but someone's gone and extended that font to include things that like P, which weren't originally in there, and I don't think O is either. And so this is actually a font itself, the just scaled up. So yeah, so someone's bothered to do that. I didn't do it. A third party did, but yeah, I could have just done a bitmap, but more geeking out.
Very cool, Tim. Very cool. Hey, Joe. I want to stick with hardware just for a minute, and then I want to go to Adam, the Albuquerque user group, as they are officially known, to talk about what they did yesterday. Joe, can you give us like a 10 minutes of your?
Sure. My internet's being flaky today, so
Okay.
I've been blanking out. It just a little bit more reliable, and I don't get blank. But anyway, so what I've been working on is a 3D print for a Sinclair printer or a Sinclair keyboard, right? Something that anybody can make with a 3D printer or get made. The key caps are 3D printed. They use just regular MX style keys, switches, right? And the labels are actually just printed
Oops.
paper that has been spray painted with clear paint to make them like plastic, and then glued onto the keycaps. So it's all low tech, right? It's all very low tech, 1980s type stuff. So the back of the keyboard, there's no board. It's just wired like that. It's point to point wiring, right? This is just multicolor wire wrap wire. It's very easy to work with because the soldering iron melts right through the plastic as you're soldering it, right? So
yeah, that's right.
String it one to the next. And then I just use some little connectors. You could use whatever kind of connector you want to connect to the board itself. But I just use that so I can mount it on a board like this, so I can do testing. Like, I've got a different ROM and the WESP on there.
Very cool.
Yeah. So
we
yeah,
need to print a baseboard too. It looks like a piece of plywood.
Yeah, this is just a piece of plywood. It was faster and easier to do that because I wanted something bigger that would fit on my print bed. So I went with plywood. It was handy. Okay.
Very cool.
But yeah, I can share the STL files for the keycaps.
How long did it take to print those keys?
The keys themselves, I think it took 4 hours, and similar with the framework. Of course, that all depends on how fast your printer prints.
Yeah.
And this is the filament kind of 3D printing.
Yeah, filament kind of 3D printing, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Theoretically, you could get it resin printed as well. It'd be a little bit better. But the keys just snap right in. You don't have to glue them down or anything. The key switches, and then you can wire them in the back.
Wow.
And go with that.
Very nice. Very nice. Cool.
I also have put together just recently here a little board. This is based on the circuit diagrams that showed up in Syntax magazine years ago for using the extra keys.
Oh.
Okay. So you can just throw in some ICs to automatically shift keys. And I picked the popular ones like the cursor keys up, down, left, and right, function, edit, graphics. And then the other one, this little strip down here, is just a bunch of diodes, diode logic, and anything that's on the same line as the shift key, right?
Yeah.
So things like shifted 1 is edit, right? And shifted 0 is delete, and shifted P is the quotation mark, right? Those all can just be handled with just diodes, so it's very cheap and easy to do.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
How long have you been hiding this from us?
I made this last week.
Wow.
Well, I mean, I fiddled around with some prototype ideas and that kind of stuff, but I wanted something that I could make that I could throw on a board like this for doing my little experimentation machines,
Yeah.
So, and I mean, this isn't just a Timex Sinclair 1000 or ZX81 type thing. You could use it on a Spectrum or a 2068. If you wanted to board or put your computer on a board for experimentation or probing with a oscilloscope or whatever you want to do, playing with it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a whole lot easier than being in a regular case.
Very nice.
So yeah,
cool.
I will. I'll make these available, I guess, on the group for everybody to play with if they want to.
Cool. Yeah, Joe. Let's talk about putting it on GitHub so people who are not in the group can discover it as well.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't personally. I love groups.io, but it's like Facebook. It's a walled garden. You have to get into it, and shit's not discoverable, and people are like, I'm going to upload this.
Speaking of that, David, you're like now someone who can make changes on there as of the other day, so you can't talk bad about it.
Yeah, let's not talk about that. I've already started receiving messages. So Adam, the
Yeah.
Albuquerque contingent.
Sure. So hi everyone, Adam from Albuquerque, I guess. David wants me to talk about the meeting that happened yesterday, but in order to talk about that, I have to go back to the meeting that happened last weekend. So last weekend, I just had a friend of mine named Chris, who we get together every couple of months, was coming over on Saturday night. I thought, well, let's see if I can get some other people to come over at the same time. So Carl came over, obviously Carl Miles, who we all know here, and another friend of mine who we get together for the Atari and Timex stuff. And there are four of us, and Carl brought over the Sinclair. So that's the new Sinclair that got released a few weeks ago. And we ended up using that for about, I don't know, a couple of hours and had a good time playing that. But you can't buy it in the United States. So I was talking this week on the group about how I want to try to get one, but it's not going to work out because it's going to ship while I'm out of town. But that brings back, we were like five of us were sending emails back and forth, and I was like getting totally confused this week about, I was like, well, damn, I couldn't keep up. And it was just like the five of us. I'm like, I'm going to start another group for like the Albuquerque contingent of us. And I started looking into it. I'm like, wait a second. There's like, I typed in like something just to make sure like where would be the best place to do it. And I found out that there's an Albuquerque class or retro computer club. And I found this out on like Wednesday or Thursday. I'm like, well, I mean, I guess I knew about it. I take that back. But last time I checked, all they covered was Mac and PCs going back to like 20 years ago, which is like practically new to me. So um, I saw that they were having a meeting Saturday, meaning yesterday, and I was like, I'm not too interested. And then I looked at some of their past meetings, and they had like computers going all the way back to the 70s. So I obviously misunderstood that they cover all sorts of things. So I contacted the person who runs this group, and he sent me a invite to their Discord like server. If everyone here knows what Discord is, I'm assuming. But it's a way to communicate with other people. And so I started communicating with people on like Friday. Like that's when I joined, and the meeting was the next day. And so I'm like contacting all these people on there trying to figure out what the heck's going on, where it is. And I brought Ryan into the loop and Carl and some other people, but it was such a short notice that these other local people couldn't go. But Ryan and I and Carl did go. And the meeting was from 11 to 4. And there was we got there at like noon. Carl got there a little after that. And I wasn't planning to bring anything at all because I was like, well, I just want to see what other people bring. But someone, I think it was you, David, said you got to like bring something to represent Timex. So I was like, well, screw it, we'll do that. So we brought two 2068s. Carl brought his like 1000 or 1500. That's like in a 1000 case. We brought um, some other random stuff. And what do you know? We weren't the only people with Timex there. Um, there was another guy, I met him, his name is Sean, and he had a ZX81 and like a case called Suntronics or something like that. And he's like, oh yeah, I'll show it to you on the site. And he links me to your site. And I was like, hell, that's David Anderson's site. Okay, I gotcha. So I kind of explained to him about the group, and he brought some other stuff, but he's a Timex fan, so maybe we'll get together. I've talked to some other people there, some Atari folks, and probably going to come over and have like a little meeting at my house. That's because there was a lot of well, when I say a lot, there was probably like 30 people there, probably more than that. Ryan, how many people do you think were there? Ryan,
Fine.
well, we'll just go with my 30 number, but it's probably more like 45. And then there were also people who just came to visit because it's semi-advertised. And someone linked to a local television ad, not ad, but segment that was like 3 minutes from this past summer that covered it as well, which was kind of cool to see. I didn't know about it.
Adam,
Yeah.
can you show the picture of Carl's table? Do you
Oh
have
yeah,
that?
I can do that. Let me bring that up here. Of course, I
Sure
don't
you
have
want
it.
to do that?
Oh, you there, Carl? All right. I was looking for you earlier.
Yeah.
I noticed you weren't there. So, let me bring that up, and I think I have it handy, maybe.
And I don't know if there was that many people. I would say it's probably maybe a dozen to 20.
Oh no, I mean there were more computers in that setup there, so there was definitely more than that, I would say. Um, okay. So I've got this up here. Let me go to my Zoom meeting and share my screen. Sort of got to get back to that. Um, sorry, I'm not very good at this, as you all know.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So, Carl, you had, you know, you had some Timexes, various um, countries of origin. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And then you had those other things which are not Timex.
Oh yeah. I mean, I still looking to share my screen. Is that cool or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just riffing while you do it.
Okay. So can you see like a couple of pictures here?
Not yet. It started. Okay, now we
Okay.
can.
Okay. Well, okay. So this was called the Holiday Textravaganza. This group has been around for about 3 years,
Okay.
and I just took out some highlights. So this is that guy Sean that I met yesterday. Is this
You need
keeping up with
to
what I'm saying?
I think you only shared
Directory.
the folder itself and not the
Oh,
desktop.
well,
Because when you
this is what happens to me whenever you have me share a screen. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So, let's see. Yeah, baby, come help me. My wife is smart. Adam is
I
dumb.
think
Double
Adam,
click
I think if you open the viewer screen and then
Yeah.
share that window, and
Oh
then you
my
can
gosh.
just
Rescue me, baby. Rescue me.
in the viewer screen, you can just go left and right to the next picture.
once
Yeah.
again proving we're masters of Timex computers. Anything more
Yes.
sophisticated.
Okay, I'm just trying to share my screen, baby.
Try double clicking one of the images.
I think
That's what
they
I'm
see it too.
doing.
And he only shared the
Yeah.
folder.
Whatever's opening up is in the background.
Adam,
Yeah.
you need to share
Oh,
you need to share the viewer window.
this is my wife. Say hello, baby. The picture's here.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
you need to share whatever showing the
yeah,
picture.
should be able to see me.
apparently they cannot.
Yeah, we're
No one
only
can see
seeing
any of
the
this.
folder.
So go to there,
The one folder.
and I want to do desktop, which I don't see it. It's okay. We can just talk about the meeting. I'll share them on the group.
So okay, so you met a yet another Timex person. That brings you up to 4 officially, right?
Well, I can't pick the window to share. I don't know
That's
why.
okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
So
So what was your question, David? Yeah,
that brings you
no,
up to
it's okay, baby.
4. No, 5. Because
Yeah,
John Brown is in
yeah,
Albuquerque. That brings you up to 5 folks in the Albuquerque Timex
yeah, that is
user
correct.
group.
Yeah.
That's crazy. How did Albuquerque become the epicenter of?
Am I sharing the correct
Yep,
screen now?
yep.
Okay. Thank you. But don't leave because who knows what I'm going to break yet. Okay. So anyway, what I was trying to say earlier was this is the holiday textravaganza. And so next up we have uh,
Just
can you see that next screen yet of this person?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay,
look at that
great.
with his
Fine.
Suntronics.
Yes. So I happen to see this, and he was I was like, wait a minute, that looks familiar, and we started chatting, and I probably talked to him more than anyone else, except for Carl and Ryan, and he just was brought some miscellaneous stuff, and he found this at an estate sale locally for just a couple of bucks. And he said there was a ton of other stuff, and he was telling me about it. And everyone like here at the meeting had stories like that. At a local meeting or a local place they found whatever they found, apples, Macs, whatever they were into. And I don't go to those places anymore, so there's still things to be found. So kind of surprising. Let's see. So this is he had this set up on top of like a little old monitor, and I was typing into. He's like, I don't know how to use that keyboard. I'm like, I don't either. Ryan picks on me for not knowing how to use this, so I typed in a short program, and it's a pretty nice little keyboard. Does anyone here have experience with it?
I can tell you that when I was 14, I desperately wanted one of those. I mean, they were in the ads in Sync magazine and stuff. It was amazing.
Yeah,
nice little
he was
keyboard.
saying that the price of it was twice as much as the computer.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, yeah, it was.
Well, I don't know. I think originally I think it was like $60, maybe $70 for it.
You think
You know,
so?
back in the day, yeah, or maybe even $50. I don't think it was that expensive. Of course, it
Hmm.
is now
Yeah.
Yeah, now
because
Okay.
they're so rare.
yes.
All right. Let's continue here. So this is our little table here. We have Ryan. He's using his 2060, although I thought it looks in a picture like he's using his 81, but I guess not. What are you showing there, Ryan?
Oh, that's the 2068.
Yeah.
It's just the game is mostly black and white. That's my, I guess you that at that time had loaded my Thief game.
Okay.
I was playing a level of that.
All right.
But
Well,
Ryan, have you
that's
shared that game with anybody?
I thought, did I post
yeah, he
that?
has.
He
I
has?
think it,
Okay.
yeah, I
Okay.
think it's on your site now, actually.
Well,
But I don't
it
know.
very well could be. And
Okay.
Carl,
Well,
you're
I
right.
mean, I do need to get more of the stuff I've recovered posted up. I guess I could post up some of the ones I was doing. Um, or I guess I should do it at least to the GitHub, I suppose.
Yes, please.
I was trying to make, uh,
Oh, there is color on the screen. The time is in color.
Uh-huh.
yeah, well, I was working on version. Once I recovered this, immediately started thinking about a version 2 where the game is in color. But that's one of the things is that's slow is to make each of the different elements a different color. You've got to insert code that basically says, "Oh, what color should this be?"
Ryan, I'm going to skip on to
You
some more
know,
pictures
and
before
so
I screw something up.
it makes it slow.
Let's see. Let's see. We have okay, so this is Carl's table.
Mhm.
He got there a little later, so he got a table right by the door, basically the last table that could have fit in this room. I have some close-ups. And so Carl, in a second, when I get to your table, why don't you talk about what you have on display there?
Well, I guess this is what looking at the left side. So there's obviously our K Pro 2 that we've kind
Oh,
of
is it showing
talked
backwards for you
about.
guys? I see.
No, it's correct.
Oh, okay.
No, it's fine. Yeah, it's so that's the K Pro 2 that we got, uh, and that we put the GoTech USB. That's kind of what brought a lot of people's attention to that. They're all like, "Is that a USB sticking out of that?" Because it's like, yeah, you don't K Pro 2 with a USB stick sticking out of it. What's going on there? Um, and then I got my little Zoltar thing from New Wave Toys. It's a little replica. So he moves his hand over the little, and it spits out the tickets, just like the big one would. And then there's a couple in front of that, there's a Casio FX795 pocket computer from about 86. And then next to that is another Casio FX730, I believe, which is another pocket computer that used little RAM cartridges that you could put in, take in and out of that thing, which is kind of nice. To the right of that, well, that Casio is actually on top of a TI 74, the basic calc
Yeah.
little pocket computer that they had. I was still kind of setting up, I guess maybe that's why it's on top of it. But anyway, that's what's underneath the Casio. To the right of that is a TI CC40, compact computer 40. And then above that is the 2048, right? Timex computer 2048. And then there's a couple micro drives. I brought the micro drives because I don't think anybody's really seen those in person. So it's kind of like, nice to bring those. Plus the silver one, right? Which is what Timex would have eventually probably had. And then you can see my TS 1500 there with the silver case and the 1000, like he was talking about there. And on the monitor, you can see that. So I brought a bunch of other stuff because I just got the ROM cartridge thing working just the night before. I stayed up till like 2 o'clock troubleshooting this thing in the morning. And you can kind of see the Timex. That's the store demonstrator that Timex
Oh,
made. That's the ROM. So you don't need the card that that it came with, right? It had a big old hardware card that you plugged in. So you don't need that. It's just It's just running on a flash chip. I don't know if you have more pictures from the other side, or
Let's see. I kind of sorted these. Let's see what we have next. I don't really know.
no,
So,
okay, that's fine.
okay, we have this one. I guess it's not showing. I guess it is
What
showing the whole
what's on
picture.
your shirt, Adam?
Oh, so I'm wearing a Christmas tie, and you can see in the next picture I'm wearing your shirt, or not your
Nice.
shirt, but the one you sent to me.
Yeah.
So we're all wearing something, game related or what have you. And in the background, you can see the table that Ryan and I put together, which I might have a better picture. I'm not sure. Um, and some of the pictures like were taken by just strangers, and I don't know, they weren't the best. Let's see how many more I have here. And that's actually, let's see if I go up oh shoot. Oh, so that's the video, or was. Let me stop screen sharing.
Mhm.
But is it still playing that?
No.
No. It's just you now.
Hmm. Son of a, sorry.
That's okay. So how often do they meet?
Apparently they meet 4 times a
Quarterly.
year, every 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they have a meeting like they did yesterday. So I was told that yesterday's meeting is like the big one of the year because it's December. So other meetings they said they have like maybe half the attendance. But I've seen pictures of other meetings, and there's quite a few people. So
Very cool.
yeah.
Very cool. So yeah, you're gonna drag that the new guy?
Sure, why not? And I'll steal his keyboard and I'll start writing things in the 1000.
Very nice. Very nice. Cool.
Yeah, I think I have. I remember buying one of those. It's in a case like that somewhere. So I think I have one of those. Maybe not a Centronics, but something really similar. Because I know other companies came out with little things like that too.
Yeah. It was heavy, by the way. I was surprised at its weight.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the plastic cases is yeah.
I think it was made of metal or something, or partly metal. I don't think
Maybe
it was
the
just,
base. Maybe the base is metal, but I know the top part is plastic.
Yeah, it's all
okay.
plastic. It could be the keyboard itself, which would make sense that dense plastic and stuff. Hey, Tim Swenson and Gustavo, do you want to give just a short update on where y'all are at with Boreal / ZX Basic?
So I guess with the last meeting we had, we talked about this, maybe even before. Anyhow, so the issues I had before, there's I think at least 2 commands that didn't work. We got those resolved. They're working now. The next step is getting the load and save, but because that requires the EX ROM, I definitely punted to Gustavo.
Yeah. No, the work you need to add the switching routine. You can add this routine in the compiler output assembler, and it's very easy to integrate with the result. That's why I sent to you a sample, and then you could test. Very simple.
Very cool.
Well, the thing is, so all the work I was doing, I didn't even try to understand anything that was going on in those .asm files. I said, oh, they're using this value. I'm going to replace it with this value, and it'll work just fine. But with the EXROM, the example you gave me said, well, you do this, and then you do some other setup when you need for the. So I'm like, looking at what they're doing, I'm not too sure. So it's a little beyond my ability. So I thought maybe I just volunteer someone else to do it.
The only part is the compiler rewrite in the kernel of the compiler or in the runtime of the compiler some parts of the ROM. Why do that? Because the ROM routines exit with the restate an error or return to the caller, and the compiler need to intercept this flow and then not return to the original ROM return. You need to return to the compiler program. That's why some part of the original ROM routine was rewritten on the runtime inside the compiler. You need to catch before calling to the original address as you translate in a very good match, because you translate only the address for the spectrum to the Timex, but these addresses are not in the home, are in the XROM, and you need to switch before calling. It's very simple. I sent to you a description. Don't worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I actually also brought in one quick thing since we were talking about printers earlier. From the Build Merit collection, there's still two 24A printers with printer paper that are looking for a home. So, and of course, I still have some cassette software and some cartridges still. So,
since you brought up printers, I guess I'd like to add one more thing. I heard so many dot matrix printers going yesterday. They had an Apple computer set up with print shop, so people were, I think there maybe were two of them set up, and so there was dot matrix printers going a lot. And I was actually worried. With my 2060, I had like spectrum conversions of like European demos, and I thought like it was going to be so loud, but you couldn't even hear the music coming out of the 2068 unless you put your ear to it like this, because it was like there was a Atari ST set up right next to us that was having Euro demos as well, and it was boom, well, not that loud because we were in a senior center, but it was much louder than us. And I was worried, like, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't turn down the sound of my 2068. People are going to be like, oh, turn that down. It sounds so horrible. But no, you couldn't even hear it.
I used to use a cassette player external speaker kit.
Mm-hmm.
They were battery powered.
Was it from Radio Shack? The little square one from Radio Shack?
Actually, one half of a stereo setup.
Oh, okay, that'll work. Yeah.
Yeah, but that would only get the beeper sound, not the sound.
No,
it plugs into the output port jack.
Right, but that only puts out the speaker, the beeper sound. You don't get out the sound chips out of that. I've tried it.
Well, the sound chip comes out of the expansion bus.
Right.
And like I said, I was kind of mentioning, and I think one of the forum posts that I think, Don Superflow, his original design brought it out. So, and I think, David, I know an earlier one of yours didn't touch the sound, but right. I think the later one that has the ROM on it and everything, the twister board, and it's got the Spectrum ROM, that video board actually takes the audio out. So if you have that board, and I think you do, Adam, the sound will come out of the HDMI port. So if you plug it into a monitor, it'll come out of the TV. The sound chip.
I had the audio jack from the VGA card going into my monitor, but I didn't turn it up super loud though.
Yeah, and also that, I guess, I think the Pico Video also takes the sound from the AY chip as well.
It mixes both of them, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I mean, it mixes them internally in the 2068
I think I'm highlighted,
on the expansion
David.
bus.
I don't need to be highlighted anymore.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Is it you? Oh, who's?
I don't see anybody highlighted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, maybe not. No, there's it's mixed right on the board. There's two resistors in the lower right hand corner that do the mixing.
Yeah, because it goes into the op amp inside the switching regulator. That's how it amplifies the sound chip internally. So it's already mixed. The beeps and the AY are mixed internally, and then it goes, like I said, to the expansion port, the sound pin, whatever pin it is, but they're already mixed.
Cool.
It's just you can't turn the internal speaker off.
Right. And Carl, I don't know where that came up recently, but in the documentation for the bus expansion unit, the proposed bus expansion unit, it does note that. It says, right there on one of those drawings that you can't turn off the internal speaker. But
right.
They plan to have an external audio jack, on the bus expansion unit.
Yes.
So David, we're down to just a couple of minutes. Why don't you tell us when our next meeting is going to be and stuff like that?
Yeah. So the first Monday in January is January 6th, which is, pretty far away. 9 p.m. Eastern. I'll be sending out the notice. You should have recovered from New Year's by then, and if not, well, take some aspirin. Yeah, it'll be a fresh year. I think I have to go back and do the math, but this will either be the fourth. This might be the fourth year that we were doing this. Next year, that is. Craziness.
And we don't have an agenda yet, right?
Not yet. No, we have plenty of time for people to step up and say that they would like to talk about various.
Well, Jim, I think maybe it's time for you to make some more art.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Jim, yeah, we could probably hook you up with a 1000 if you'd like. maybe even one of Joe's keyboards.
How you talking? I don't know if I want to build up my calluses again on that original membrane keyboard.
Yeah, the calluses weren't so much on the fingers as they were on the soul.
That is very true.
Oh, thank you, Jim. I really enjoyed that. I hope the rest of you guys enjoyed that. And we'll see you on the internets. Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.